Mike, why don't we do a video on wood turning workshops?
I think that'd be a great idea, Rick. Seems like everybody wants to improve their workshop. Come on into my shop, Rick.
Whoa, this is a nice shop you got here, Mike. A little on the crowded side, but...
It is. Well, you know, Parkinson's Law, everything expands to meet the space. In Murphy's Law, you just never have enough room for all the stuff you got. Hi, y'all. Welcome to my shop. I want to introduce my guest, Rick Morris.
Hello, and I am the Rick in Rick Turns.
Rick doesn't live too far from me, and I met him on YouTube, and I thought, so I invited him over for a shop visit. And as we got to talking, we thought it might be interesting to do a collaboration on how two different guys handle their shops, or sheds as they say, across the pond.
Yes, setting up a wood turning shop so that it works effectively for you is going to be pretty important, make it a lot easier for you to get your wood turning done.
We're going to make this in a couple of different videos, and we're going to switch over to Rick's channel, and we're going to make the navigation easy because it'll pop up at the end of this video.
Yes, it will. Just look for a link at the end of the video, or you can also look in the show notes down below the video, or in the upper right-hand corner where the little info icon shows up occasionally. There'll be a link there to part 2 of the video.
You know, the guy's going to do everything a little differently. We thought it'd be interesting to see how you could see how two different guys set up their shops a little differently, or we say shops, whether it's a garage or a basement.
Yes, and our shops are definitely set up differently. You'll see both of our shops and how we've attempted to solve similar problems. We hope that you wood turners are going to be able to get something out of this, maybe get some good ideas on how to set up their shop.
I think so. I think that it'll have some tips for inexperienced wood turners or new ones on organizational tips and more.
Okay, we're going to be discussing a number of different things through the course of this video, relevant, of course, to workshops. We want to talk about the size your workshop needs to be, hint, as big as possible. We're going to talk about where you put your tools in it, what kind of storage needs you're going to have, and how to satisfy those. And then probably in a second video, I don't think we'll get it into this one, we're going to talk about electrical, power, and lighting.
So let's talk a little bit about shop size. Now, Rick and I both recognize we're blessed and with the size of our shops, and not everybody has the same kind of shop, but you can put them in different locations. Mine's in the basement. Rick's is in a garage. A lot of times it can be in a small shed in your backyard. As a minimum, you want to have at least 8 feet by 8 feet for the common items of equipment that every wood turner is going to have. I have a large lathe with a large footprint, which, you know, it's made a little larger because of the storage cabinet on the end. But for a lot of wood turners, they're going to have just a mini lathe, which is perfectly adequate. Probably 90% of the things that I turn can be turned on a mini lathe. And it has a much smaller footprint. And of course, the only other item that you're going to have in that wood turning area is going to be a grinder. Let's talk about grinder briefly. Now, I've got an 8-inch slow-speed grinder, and that's optimum. But you know, the 3520 high-speed grinders will work fine. They just take off more steel, and you got to be more careful. Now, mine I've been turning 10 years, and I've been accumulating toys. So I have CBN wheels, but that's a luxury. It is not a necessity for a beginner. Don't spend the money on CBN wheels. You got more important things to spend money on. A 6-inch grinder can certainly be adequate, but you do want to move away from that gray wheel that you sharpen your lawnmower blade with to have an aluminum oxide wheel. And I think we got a clip of Rick's grinder set up.
As you can see right here, I've got white oxide wheels. Mike's got the CBN wheels. That's definitely something I've been lusting after for a long time.
Now, the grinders need to have some type of jigs to be able to sharpen with. As a minimum, you want a platform and some type of sliding arm with a jig that allows you to put a tool on it for bowl gouges and spindle gouges, and you can actually make those. The extension, I actually cut mine off because it was so long, it was unnecessary, and so that allows me to get the grinder a little closer to the wall than if I left it in the original length.
A bandsaw is a great accessory to have in your workshop. Doesn't require a whole lot of room, Though you can see I've kind of wedged it in here and it hasn't got a whole lot of room. But if you can get a bandsaw, and if you ever work with logs, I think you'll be very pleased to have the bandsaw. Now it doesn't need a lot of room because generally I'll have maybe a log that's 18 inches wide. I'm going to put it on here, spin it in a circle to cut out a bowl blank. And then the depth here I've got about, I don't know, 13 inches, 13, 14 inches. Right at 13 inches. Okay, it is 13 inches then. Son of a gun, I was actually right. Now this is a full-size floor standing model. You can, of course, get smaller ones. The main thing you want to look for in a bandsaw is this height right here. And the taller the better if you're working with logs. 6 inches would be a minimum, I would say. And this is even better. And Mike's is even better than that because it goes up bigger. And Mike's got a bigger depth right here.
I've upgraded from a 14-inch, but this is a luxury, not a necessity. You can get by with something smaller. The key is the height here, and not so much the throat depth that a lot of flat workers are interested in.
Now another thing about a bandsaw is there are some bandsaws that you can buy, say with a 6-inch depth of cut right here. But then later on, when you decide you're ready to move up to a bigger, heftier model, you can buy a riser block. And the riser block will just fit over here, raise the whole head up, maybe another 6 inches, and then you've got a 12-inch bandsaw instead of a 6-inch bandsaw. That's worth taking a look at. As far as blades go, I generally use a 1/2-inch blade here with 3 teeth per inch. If you're cutting green wood, you want a really coarse blade. So this is 3 teeth per inch skip tooth, 1/2-inch blade. I've tried 3/8 inches. They work okay. I think they tend to wear out a little bit sooner, but you can make tighter curves with them. And this is another bandsaw that I have right here. This is a pretty old one. One of the first power tools I ever bought, like 35, 40 years ago. It's nice to have a second one because I can keep a real thin blade in here. I've got about a 1/8-inch blade. So when I need to make fine, very tight curves, I'll come to this bandsaw right here. As you can see, this is not a full-size bandsaw. It bolts onto the bed right there. And it's got about I think it's about 5 3/4 inch throat right there. And works well for what I use it for. Also, being in a corner like this, since I only use it for very small work, being in a corner, not really a problem.
Drill presses are very handy, but certainly not necessary. When you're starting out, you can do just fine with a electric hand drill. But I'd have to tell you, I wished I'd bought this years ago, even before I got into wood turning. You can get them fairly inexpensive, and this is a bench style model that doesn't go all the way to the floor.
Now this is a very small model. I think the base of it shows right here, yes. This is a benchtop model bolted into a workbench that I've got here. And it's fairly short, as you can see. It's pretty powerful. It's got about a 1/2-inch chuck in it right there, and it really does everything that I've ever asked it to do. Haven't been disappointed with it. And this particular size, not too expensive.
But there is an option. There are ways that you can do a lot of drilling on your lathe. It's just a horizontal drilling machine. So that's always an option if you're not to the point where you want to invest in a drill press or you don't have room for a drill press.
Table saw is a nice accessory to have in the workshop, assuming you've actually got room for it and can use it. This is mine right here. You can see it's pushed up against the wall and surrounded by other stuff. Mike uses his table saw as a workbench. I use my table saw pretty much just to catch dust. I just don't have room to put it out in my shop where I can actually get to it and use it in a way that would be useful. I can cut some small stuff on this, but obviously with a wall a couple of feet behind it, I'm not going to rip a 8-foot 2x4.
I'm using my table saw, which I think a lot of wood turners, where you wind up using it as a workbench top more frequently than you use it as a table saw, because my workbench is at the other end of the shop and it is completely overloaded. This one, I keep most of my tools on wheels. This one is easy to, with one press of the pedal, I can relocate this to get it out of the way to give a little more room, or if I'm doing ripping a long piece.
Well, what's a workshop without a workbench? Mike seems to be getting by pretty well using the top of his table saw and a big slab of wood on it, and that certainly works for him. I built this workbench right here about 30, maybe 35 years ago, back when I was doing flat work. And I've got a tail vise on it right here. I've got a side vise on it up there. And then down at one end, I've got a machinist vise as well. And that comes in occasionally handy when I get out the angle grinder and want to cut off a piece of metal to make one thing or another.
People often ask, where do you position the lathe in the shop? And I just want to make a couple of considerations. Number one, you have to have room on the headstock area for a knockout, to reach a knockout bar to go through the spindle. That's one consideration. I have mine angled at about a 45-degree angle against the wall, because if I had it 90 degrees to the wall, it would take up too much room. But the advantage of this is if I have a bowl come flying off, it's going to keep flying. It'll bounce off the wall and ricochet. If you have your lathe flat up against the wall, it's going to collect shavings. It will encourage you to put tools against the wall where you have to reach over your shop lathe to get them, which is a potential hazard. But also, if anything gets dislodged, and sooner or later it will, it comes flying off your lathe, it'll hit that wall and come bouncing back at you. So there is an advantage of having it at an angle. One consideration also is when you turn green wood, you're going to sling a lot of wet stain that's going to hit anything behind the lathe.
I've got two full-size lathes in my workshop here, and that's the main reason I don't have room for my table saw. This is a Powermatic 3520B that I bought, well, it's been about a couple of years now. And this one right here is a Nova Galaxy DVR lathe, which is on loan to me to shoot some videos of it. The Powermatic here, you can see, is pushed pretty much right up against the wall, or in this case, the garage door. And that's not exactly ideal because you can't get behind it. And that can be inconvenient sometimes. If you want to run a dust hose back there or something, it's a lot easier if you've got room to walk back there. It's also easier to clean underneath it if you've got more room. But I pushed this one back to give me more room for my other one. Another reason I have this where it is because I've got the dust collector over here in the corner. And before I got my second lathe there and had to rearrange things, I had this pulled out from the door. And then that made it real easy just to run a dust hose over here. And you can see I've even still got it attached there so that I can reach it without trying to get behind the lathe.
One of the advantages of having this lathe in the back of my shop is I can see anyone that comes in. You don't want to ever have startle, so if you have a choice, you want to position your lathe where people can't walk in behind you and startle you while you're operating the lathe. Your tool grinder should be as close as feasible to your lathe. Mine is 5 or 6 steps. It's fairly convenient. I wish it was closer, but I don't have room for it. But you don't want it over on the other end of the shop, or it's going to discourage you from stopping and sharpening your tools as often as you should. And as we all know, if it's almost sharp, it'll almost cut. Because of the scope of the content, Rick and I thought it would make sense if we divide this information into a 3-part video series. In the next part, which is going to appear on Rick's channel, we're going to go into storage. If you're not familiar with Rick's channel, Rick Turns, no problem. Just click on the link and it'll take you directly to his channel. In addition, we're going to have a link to the other videos under the description for each video. We welcome any questions or comments that you have. Stay safe, my friends, and y'all come back here.